You're just in time. No, we already had it.
Yeah.
But you can still
Want me to
stay.
leave then, maybe?
Sit next to me. Don't say anything bad. We're on TV now. And ladies and gentlemen, home as soon as Mr. Glavy is situated and comfortable, the rest of the committee members will commence business. Oh, yeah, Paul.
Good, how are you, PJ?
I'd stay standing up.
Oh, that's right.
Sure, the last one. Pledge allegiance, please.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, when we last saw you, Hanukkah was just ending, and we're getting ready for Christmas and New Year's, so hopefully everybody had a wonderful holiday season, and now it's back to business. And this evening, on the Master Plan Update Steering Committee, it's the entire committee is meeting, and we're going to be discussing what the Selection Subcommittee went over and are offering as a recommendation to the Update Committee to go forward to the Planning Board with the recommendation that the steering committee is going to make for a consultant recommendation. This evening, what we'll do is we'll approve minutes, talk about a meeting schedule going into the future, and then we'll go through a briefing that we've put together and talk about some of the thought process we went through, the rationale, and then it's a briefing that we want to be prepared to give to the Planning Board a week from this evening on the 14th. And what the subcommittee is looking for is the endorsement of the full committee to go forward, that it's the committee's recommendation to the Planning Board. Then we'll look at the schedule for vendor debriefs, because I did promise all the vendors that we would debrief them after award. So this next process takes us through where we present to the Planning Board, and then from there we look to negotiations and the award, and then the vendor debriefs after that. And then, Mr. Glavy, if you want to once again lead us in anything you'd like to also talk about from the 2002 plan, we'll jump into that also. Okey-doke. So any question, folks, on what we're going to do this evening? Okay, thank you. All right, so we have minutes here from the 10th of November. Ready to take a motion on them?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from November 10th, 2015.
A motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, already mentioned that 14th, a week from tonight, we'll be meeting with the Planning Board. On that, I'm asking that certainly the entire subcommittee, the Selection Subcommittee, attend that. The full committee, your discretion. We'll post it as a full committee meeting also, and if we have that quorum there, we're posted as such. Otherwise, the only real business that needs to be done at that point is going to be the subcommittee.
There's
Right.
a form, isn't there?
Welcome, folks. Okay, now,
The trick is to peek in the window before you walk through the door and to count the heads, and then...
I gotta say, there was a great to come in and got a big smile from somebody. I'll tell you what it was.
all right, now going into the future, for the update steering committee meeting dates. Mike, I know you got a personal problem with Tuesdays. Corey has a problem with Thursdays.
Right.
How does Wednesdays work out for folks?
They're fine for me in terms of general availability.
Yeah, generally fine.
And here's what I anticipate in the short term for sure, is, so next week, when we present to the planning board, figure a week to 2 weeks to get a contract awarded, so now we're at the end of January, going into February. Probably the first meeting with the vendor, that is, when we have a post-award visit, if you will. Certainly like the selection subcommittee there for that, and really the whole committee, we will post it, and I think it'd be useful for the whole committee to be there. But the subcommittee, I think, will drive that particular evening. But then we start gathering more information from the vendor, the things that they would like us to participate with them, and their plan as they start going forward. And at that point, we really need the entire committee present so that we can figure out the division of duties. And we'll talk a little bit this evening when I go through the conversations we had during the interview process as to some of the expectations that these vendors have of us also, and the town at large. So whether it's us as the subcommittee, the committee, the various boards and committees in towns, and then the residents of the town also. So I'm content not to actually come up with a future date until after we see how next week fleshes out, and anticipate that the first full committee meeting again after this evening other than who shows up next week, will be first week of February at the earliest. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, we'll go that way. Okay, what we have a briefing. The intent of this briefing, as you can see, it's going to be to the planning board. What I'd like to do this evening is just go through the slides, give a little rationale behind each slide. I'm going to ask if you got some comments and improvements for the slides, save them to the end, because we'll just go through them and then see if your question gets answered as we go through the briefing. And then if what hasn't been answered, then we've got to answer it, and we'll do that. And then we'll go back and we'll adjust the slides as necessary to make it a full committee presentation, if you will, okay? Product to give to them. All right. There's the title slide. Next, please. Okay, so the purpose is for the committee to give the planning board a recommendation as to who our consultant should be. And remembering, in fact, that it's the planning board that actually makes the decision, so it's our recommendation to the planning board. Okay, next, please. Just a rehash of the schedule. And I got this 2016 correct this time around. Okay, so just going to talk about the process. What we did to develop an RFP, how we put together the subcommittee, who the subcommittee members were. What we did is we looked at 4 submissions that were sent to us. We reduced that down to 3 for the interview process. And then the way we came to our recommendation was we arrived at a consensus first, and then we actually held a vote after that consensus was achieved, and it was a unanimous vote. Next, please. Okay, so how do we go about organizing this? It's just kind of a reminder for everybody that's going to be the audience. We know town meeting authorized it. Both the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board appointed us all. We had our first organization meeting back in April, if you think about that now. That's, what, 9 months ago now?
That's crazy.
So, we met with Mpusc, Mark Rassicott. You helped us understand some things that we were not aware of, or if we were, an increased awareness. Then we had various town boards and committees come together. Certainly, we're always open to the general public, and on a couple occasions, we actually did have the general public. We liaised with other town boards and committees. And as I'm saying this, what I forgot to put in there, Maren?
Other towns.
The other towns, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so add that line. And then we had numerous meetings as we went through the process. So, next, please. The priorities that we're all aware of, that we established. And this particular slide also went, if you recall, was just as it is there, to the vendors. So the priorities that we as a full committee came up with and worked with the subcommittee and then presented to the vendors. And again, that's to orient folks as to how we were thinking or what we were thinking as we went through this. Next, please. The major areas that were scored. Who responded? This is alphabetical. Now, one recommendation came through is to go in the order that we sort of recommend, if you will. I chose to go alphabetical, and as we talk about this later on, certainly open to your counsel on that. But the Cecil Group and subs with them, or if you will, partners, Green International, who we know well here in town, FXM Associates, planning people, that's their businesses. We're all familiar with Mpusc. RKG Associates, they're from Quincy. Dodds and Finkler, Community Circle and Community Opportunities Group, we're partners with them. And the VHP from Watertown, Landwise, and an individual, Glenn Garber, he's his own company, if you will, was with VHB. Next, please. Okay, so now what I do is going into the particular groups and how we look. So really, it was 2 areas we looked at, the proposal and then the interview. And then what did we come out of from there? And again, staying alphabetically.
And Paul,
Yeah.
sorry, one quick question. To that point, so I watched the subcommittee interviews. Could you tell me which one went first, second, or third? Because I can't remember the names of the groups, or I
On
remember.
TV, yes, when we interviewed,
Yeah.
sure can. VHB, RKG, Cecil.
Thank you. Got it. Thanks.
And on the previous, go back one slide, please. What I want to put here, too, is that we only took the 3. We either asterisk or do something to indicate the 3 that went to interviews. Thank you. So now in alphabetical order, how we interviewed. The Cecil Group, a very good proposal. What was on paper, I think pretty much everybody, and Mike, Rich, chime in here. We were very content, if you will. Certainly, each one has deficiencies, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. There was no one perfect candidate. Just like, there's not going to be one perfect quality in any organization that we shop at or deal with. But when it's all said and done, in fact, I could say about all four, really, there was very good proposals. With the Cecil group, most unfortunate, the principal, Mr. Cecil, dominated the entire interview. And as I say, Green is with them. We know Green well here in this town. We're pleased with what Green does. And Green did not have an opportunity to present to us what they're good at, how they've serviced us. One of the other gentlemen that was on the team with Cecil, he would offer some, certainly I personally thought was some very good insight, but was then interrupted and hastened to finish up, I need to speak, was pretty much Mr. Cecil's approach to this. That bothered us greatly, in all candor. And as you can see, we came out from that with a do not consider. We just didn't feel comfortable with the Cecil group. Next, please. MAPC. Certainly a very good proposal, all things as we looked at. But initially, we kind of took the approach of, okay, we have 4 proposals with us now. Of the 4, is there one that we think really doesn't match up to the quality of everything else we're seeing up to this point? MAPC just didn't seem to hit the mark for us. It's not a critique, or it is a critique, but it's not a criticism per se, that there was something all that bad about it. It's just that the sense of the group, and that we arrived at consensus also, and from there we chose to go with only 3 for the interview process, and the MAPC was not one of them.
That's right. And that was based on the proposals, purely the proposals, because we hadn't interviewed by now.
Correct. And at that, and I do want to offer this, because Mark Rassicot, we had an opportunity to speak to him as he was representing MAPC as, in essence, an advisor to us at that first phase. And certainly a very knowledgeable man. The staff they have there are good people. Just from the proposals, we didn't take that. That's what we wanted to go forward with.
I'm going to break your rule, if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
Only because I don't think these folks are going to come up again. Is it appropriate to list them as MAPC? Because that's the agency, but this is a consulting group that's a subdivision of them, right? I mean, it's MAPC is the entity to which we belong, right?
This is what we received. It is a proposal from MAPC.
Okay, all right. So that's interesting. They, I thought they had a consulting subdivision, but not. That's
the
not
first sentence.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah, that's just. I'm not asking
No.
a question. Yeah.
Fair enough. You can always break any rule you wish.
Well,
I was asking permission.
Next, please. Second up, RKG. As you can see, we felt the proposal did score well. Again, not perfect, and certainly on the margin where one member of the group of us, felt maybe a little higher here, a little lower there, and we looked at all across. But when we drew a line across, if you will, there wasn't a strong deviation from, wow, this is lousy, and the other person say, this is great. We did not have that kind of excursion in assessments. As you can see, we have the was highly regarded project manager, team had extensive experience. We liked the visioning components, so their ability to look into the future, so to speak, and how they were going to help us come up with a vision for the town. We felt very good about that. Now, the familiarity with Littleton was more from being in the local area, but certainly they did have familiarity with our town. The interview, collegial, enthusiastic, and we say, possess best vision, as we say. They spoke well, presented well, and it was, as I put that, and the reason I wrote collegial there is as the members interacted with each other, there was almost a fluidity as to they've worked with each other is the bottom line to that. They knew how to bounce off each other, so to speak, and that was good. So then you see that easy manner, and it was logical. Their understanding of the areas we have, their outreach, sustainability, and I'm going to let Mike talk about sustainability here in a moment, because Mike's got an opinion on it. And it's an important opinion, though. It really is. I'm busting his chops. It's important. Economic development, human community development, and certainly they of all, the fiscal constraints seem to have the best handle on that. The best plan in the world that's going to cost $1 million probably is not going to work here in Littleton. And certainly our recommendation.
We can afford $1 million plans. It's the ones that are $30 million we can't afford.
There you go. So the recommendation is that we recommend as certainly an option to the planning board. Mike, since we're on it, I know you've had some thoughts on sustainability. You want to just raise them here?
It has more to do with what is meant by sustainability. I know it appears in various pieces, but, and I'm not sure how much the planning board has already decided what sustainability means, but from the material that I have access to, it's become I don't mean to say there is no meaning to the term sustainability at this particular time. You can talk about environmental impacts, you can talk about maintaining a lifestyle, and then talk about what you mean by that. I'm not trying to make this longer, it's just that I'm concerned that there might be someone on the planning board who may have decided what sustainability means, that they have certain expectations, and it turns out that's not what is going to happen at all. The difficulty here is that there's probably an important concept, because I do know that other members of the subcommittee, as well as who's sitting in here, have an idea of what is meant by sustainability. And if we do, maybe there's a one-word or two-word way of communicating what we mean. And that's...
I think it's a great point, because I think out of all the things that we've looked at in the previous master plan, when we talk about what we think we're going to do for this master plan, sustainability is the most recent concept. The other ones are more traditional. They've been around for a while. They're clearly defined. When you say it, there's a high correlation between what I think versus what you think versus what you all think for something like transportation, economic development, things like that. Sustainability is very new, and I think you're right. It's a little broad, and I think as a town, obviously, for us, it's important because it is in the documentation. It is going to emerge as at least some factor in how we develop the master plan. What focus it has is still to be determined, as are the other ones, all of them, frankly. But I think as a town, it probably would be a good idea to have it, whether we lead it or whether we are participants in it, and whether it's the planning board that leads it or the board of selectmen, I don't know. But I think it's a great point. I think that as a town, we should probably define it in a way that when we talk about it, we all know what we think we mean by that. And it may not be exactly what other people in the town mean, but that's okay, and it doesn't mean they're wrong or that we're more right. It just means that's our framework for doing this job today that's in front of us.
You know what this reminds me of, Myron? Going back to the last master plan, at that time, I think the phrase that was bandied about a lot was character of the community. Well, we want to maintain the character. Well, what does that mean? Again, it's the same thing. It was everybody used it, but everybody had a different idea of what it meant. So I think it's important. Yeah, if we're going to be throwing around terms, then we ought to be specific about what we mean by it. Otherwise, we run a risk of having unnecessary conflicts.
Well done.
Because certainly some people see it as environmental sustainability.
It's certainly a component of it. You can't ignore that.
Renewable energy,
Right.
Financials.
economic, yep, so, thank you.
It's actually, I've read up on that, but it's actually a global plan for economy, ecosystem, and human interface to all of that, so that there's a balance going forward, so that we all can sustain what we have and yet not disturb and wreck the ecosystem of the earth. So everything economically, like if you go to Shaw's, at what time at the fish market, you'll see sustainable, this is all part of that program. But, so that's a certain type of sustainability definition, but it could be also other things based on what we're doing here. So it might be a little confusing which way people will perceive this.
The other issue, and this underlies my personal concern about it, is that the folks who are part of the, shall we say, the scholars and practitioners who define sustainability, it goes back actually to the late 80s and early 90s, that by and large what they've discovered is that in order for any of the things you just listed, including whether it's water, fresh, or otherwise, the whole list is that what's happened is because the ability to measure, the attempts to obtain sustainability in any one of the subcategories is sorely lacking. In other words, the metrics, and then we're not talking always about numbers. And also the whole issue that has arisen over unintended consequences when you try for sustainability in a particular area, for example, with healthcare. And there are lots of stories. And what my main concern is that I don't want to get us, I was trying to get us out of vagueness. And so if anyone has a suggestion for what we intend to communicate to sustainability, what we mean by that for our purposes, that would be very helpful. I mean, merely saying the environment, assessing environmental impact carries an enormous amount of stuff going forward. If we just said environmental impact, understanding of outreach, the economic, or the impact on environment of any of the decisions we make, that would cover a lot of ground. Shaky ground, but a lot of ground.
So Mike, this will be sustainability specific to Littleton.
Yes.
So the oceans
But
won't
it still
matter.
comes up with what's our definition of sustainability.
Yeah.
Why don't we all write it down and then we'll,
But, and the reason,
because this horse has pretty much been beat.
and it's a good point,
There's no horse.
because as we've had this conversation now, inside of 5 minutes, just now, we spent much more time on it when we were in the subcommittee, and then listening also during the interview process. And that's why I stopped here on that word. For the most part, I feel confident every other single word that's in this briefing, we're on a margin as to the differences of what it may mean, okay, and what the phrase may mean. But you see sustainability, that margin increased substantially. And just want to highlight that to the group here, so that you know where we were at. Yeah. All right, next, please. Oh,
Just a question. RKG, what does it stand for?
yeah, here's RKG is how they presented it to us.
Well, okay, because I know VHB is Vanessa, Hagen, Brustlin. I know that one.
Right, but that's what they used to be, so.
They used to be anyway.
Right.
No matter, just if you knew, you knew. If you
I
don't, you
did.
don't.
Didn't even ask that question, to be honest with you. Ralph, Kenny, and Greg, I don't know.
Well, it's
Next, please. VHB.
Vanessa, Hagen, and Brustlin. Yeah.
Again,
Used to be, anyway.
yeah, the proposal did score well. Their staff is experienced, certainly on depth. We like their experience with master plans here in the state, and then certainly nearby in New Hampshire also. There's that word sustainability. Now, what we saw nicely here is that some relevant industry awards is put up there. So awards that mean something in that industry of urban planners, if you will, community planners. They had listed some. And the other companies actually had not listed any that I recall. Did I miss any? I only recall VHBs, at least off the top of my head right now. So, anyway, so now the interview. Okay, some concerns. We felt that the amount of interaction they were proposing to have with the town, and actually that even went back to the proposal itself, and our thought process was, well, we'll ferret this out in the interview process and see if there's an expansion. And certainly there's opportunity to have grown upon that, but as they scoped their proposal, and as they presented to us even during the interview, there wasn't going to be as much interaction as we had anticipated, and certainly what we saw in others. And that broad stroke of economic development, where we certainly seem to have a concern here in town as to how we're going to continue going forward and improving on what's already happening here in town. The comfort level was not as high there. Nevertheless, it still overall scored well, and it's our recommendation is that we at least take it to the planning board as an option. Next, please. Okay, you heard me say no one perfect candidate. The real discriminators came from the interviews, because we've all scored proposals some way, shape, or form previously, and you can put a lot of nice things down on paper. But it's the third bullet there where we asked ourselves, who would we like to work with? And the interview process, given that the proposals themselves were similarly close enough, and then in one instance, as we said with Cecil Group, we felt very strongly there as to, we didn't think it was the right fit for our town. And then between VHB and RKG, we had a very high comfort level to work with both those companies. And more than one member said, well, we could probably go either way here. And as we continue to hash it out, and as I said, we arrived at a consensus. So next, please. So here's our recommendation. is that the planning board pursue the contract award to RKG. Should that not work out because we can't come to terms, certainly VHB as a backup is a very viable candidate from our perspective. But certainly we're recommending that neither Cecil nor MAPC be considered for an award. So what that means, in plain English, if RKG and VHB, we can't come to terms, we're going around the circle again. Okay? That's the risk we face.
Another question on RKG, especially since your recommendation. If we don't, where are they based in? Are they a Boston-based firm or at least Massachusetts?
No, I've got it on the slide there. I
Oh,
don't remember
okay.
off the top of my head, so I
Sorry about
apologize to you.
that.
No, we've got it. And we'll get it for you right now.
3 questions. I was anticipating that.
RKG is out of Quincy.
Quincy,
Yep.
okay.
Judy Barrett was,
Okay, yeah.
right, she's been at several different firms
Sure,
over the
right.
years.
That's where
and
she is
she's
now.
RKG.
Okay, yeah.
So the VHB woman is now with RKG? Is that what you just said?
No, but she's been with other groups.
Judy Barrett is the woman's name. She's a planner, a longtime planner that's done a lot of work in the area, and she's at RKG for this proposal. She wasn't at VHB before.
But she did work in Groton, right, wasn't she?
Westford, too.
Westford, yeah, okay.
And she was the lead and presented very strongly. And she talked about, very collegial, very comfortable. As we speak well amongst ourselves and we're, friendly and familiar with each other, her first interaction came across very nicely that way.
Yeah.
Everybody but our distinguished gentleman to the right. Next, please. It's good having you back, man.
Yeah, where have I been?
I don't know. Okay, so questions. So what I'd like to do is take it out of this slide format, and let's just go back to the beginning, and then we'll go slide by slide. And if there's anything you want to ask questions about or have suggestions to change, let's review that, okay?
So the order of presentation was RKG, VHB, and system.
Interviews.
No,
Yeah, interview.
well,
That was
RKG
the
and
interview process.
VHB.
RKG first,
And VHB, yeah. If you look at the last slide, it'll say if we had,
Right, but the order that we interviewed.
in the interview.
oh, interviewed, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause you're trying to remember from watching on
6 o'clock
television.
was
Yeah.
Yeah.
RKG.
Yeah.
Now, the other 2 participants beyond you folks were Tim Goddard and Bonnie, right? Did they have, I know they're not here tonight, but did they have
Gary.
any other kind of feedback that's, distinct from what is being presented here tonight?
No, the majority of the feedback,
their names.
the interaction in the room, because while both Bonnie and Tim were able to participate in the proposal process, the interview process, they were unable to. So the majority of the input has come from Gary, Rich, Mike, Maren, and myself.
Mhm.
After the initial weeding out process, if you will, from the proposals. And then certainly Bonnie's expertise, in the whole contractor process. And then Tim, I've been our own town administrator and currently town administrator of Carlisle. And plus he's got the bigger town experience of Fitchburg, Framingham, thank you, yeah. All right, anything on this one? Like the tiger paw? All right, purpose. Does it speak to what you think we're trying to achieve? Okay,
Yes.
next. We think the schedule's accurate. Yeah.
At least the last day, the past.
Am I the only one, or I mean, since I know what the schedule is, I'm biased, but picture someone seeing this for the first time, is this, from a presentation point of view, visible? Because it glues, it's just it's a cosmetic
tough.
issue.
It's tough. Yeah.
And I think that you're going to get delayed on this.
I can change that for the old
Yes,
man.
something a little bit, yeah, you got it.
And the blind
That's
woman.
okay, you can do it, sorry, I'm entitled.
All right.
Tell my arm, I think it's broken. Oh, wait, it is.
I still have this left.
Oh, you do have a,
Yeah,
I know, I just
okay.
noticed that.
oh, Mike, We didn't send you a get well card.
It's all right, you couldn't have it, happened too
Oh, I
fast.
just noticed.
Kitty give herself a Christmas present, did she?
In a way, yes, but not in the way that you might think, okay?
Moving on.
Okay, we'll brighten that up.
Okay.
Fair enough, thank you. Okay, next?
Oh, back to the schedule.
Yep.
You only go back to, like, October. Maybe we should at least let people know that, I know there's not much room, that we started back in April last year.
And remember the process slide, next slide, it does say that. I mean, we can put it on here,
It says it, but,
maybe on the organization. I've got no problem putting it on here if you want.
yeah.
Well, I think this schedule is specific, other than the last item, the schedule itself is specific to choosing a consultant. The rest, all those, I mean, there's more things we could put in there that we are going to do. So it's not a whole schedule of our business, other than the last. It's just
Maybe
like,
that
oh, we're
needs to
gonna
be
hire
made clear
them,
then.
and then we're gonna go through this whole process that's implied, not specific, and will be completed in May of
But for
2017.
people who are just tuning into this for the first time, and people who watched us in the spring and forgot that we even existed till now, this might be, a beginning date might be a
You
helpful
could put a beginning date at the
milestone.
top, like the whole MPUSC
So,
process.
to scratch your
started.
itch, we put April 28th in there?
Yeah.
That was the date?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll confirm here and say, okay, we can do that.
It's like golf, they don't ask you how, just ask you how many.
All right, next slide, please. Anything else we need added here, folks?
Just the comment you guys already made about meeting with other towns.
Say it again, please, Melissa.
Just the comment you guys already made about meeting with other towns.
Yeah, thank you. Is that on this side or the next one? Which one do we want to put that on?
Yeah, it's on this one.
Third to last.
All right. Yeah, and then we can put put it under met with various town boards, how's that? And we'll add met with other towns. And we can expand on that bullet a little bit. All right. On to the, okay, so there we are. So the priorities,
That was straight from your
yeah.
briefing.
And that's what we looked at, and that really gave us the springboard for the proposals themselves. And then the questions we asked were derived from these areas. And then when we did our first proposal scrub, if you will, we went straight by what we had in the in the major RFP areas. All right.
Just one question again. And that's where we have budget and schedule. What we really mean is the information we collected on their performance with budget and schedules as part of their qualification. It's not their budget for us or the schedule for us.
Okay,
Good point. Yeah, we can let's put a parenthetical in there.
yeah,
It's,
Yeah,
good point.
That's good.
That's not what I thought.
Yep. me
yeah,
either.
I just, if it's not, if it's
Past, I
crystal
think,
clear.
how about past performance? Does that work?
Yeah.
Sure.
You can speak to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is familiarity misspelled?
Yeah.
Got one too many eyes in there.
Else.
No, what else? There you go.
Thank you. Okay, our RFP respondents. Are you content with alphabetical, or do you want a different order?
That's fine.
I think it should be the order we picked them in. So,
Top to bottom? Which?
oh,
So the order we picked them in?
Well, I mean,
Or the order you interviewed them, and if people watched on TV, they
See,
might want that
That was
reference
my
point.
mental
Yeah.
mapping,
see,
yeah.
RKG at the top, because Cecil Group, they're the ones we didn't go with, and they would be the first impression in my mind when I was looking at this. So that would be the one that would imprint.
There is a school of thought, and it's a lot of times on advocacy briefings, I do put the choice I want first. When I'm asking for a recommendation.
Yeah.
Or when I'm making the recommendation, but, so which order do you want to go in then? The one we picked, and then go down to the
RKG.
bottom?
Yeah,
And
RKG.
MAPC being last?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I'm,
And isn't that the order you interviewed them in as well? So that
Yeah.
kind of works too. Yeah.
I agree.
Yep, I can,
So now you want them in the order we interviewed them in?
It's the same, it matches.
Pretty close, because MAPC had an interview and they'd be last.
Yeah.
Now you got correlation. Is it causation?
I hope not, because that would speak to you guys.
All right, we reorder it based on that crowd. And then we'll reorder the slides that follow when we describe each one and put them in the same order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I noticed you put the
No,
ones.
well, actually, I actually disagree. I would go in order of from bottom to top for
Yeah,
the slides.
you're
themselves.
building up.
Eliminating,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would go from bottom to top. Talk about
Yep.
why you didn't interview Watertown, or, excuse me, MAPC. Talk about why you didn't bring Cecil to the planning board, and then
Next,
just go from there. That's how I would do it.
Okay.
Yep.
So the respondent slide in the order we recommend, and then in the each individual company, inverse order. Got it.
Can you handle that? It's not going to be too confusing for you as a presenter? I'm going to get lost in the weeds there.
you know, I hope I
Do we
didn't
see
open up
continental drift
a
here?
bag of worms here by rearranging the order.
All right, how about the words that we have on the slides for each company? Is there enough substance there, along with the speaking part, to provide information to the planning board?
Yes. The only note that I had was that I didn't see in here, and maybe you'll speak to it, is a summary of the discussion that drove you towards the consensus. Would it be worthwhile to, I mean, you're implying it based on what you think about each company, but is it, and maybe there wasn't anything worthwhile to speak of, and that's fine too. But just, when
I
you,
can speak more on the,
yeah, and it doesn't have to be part of the slide either, or a slide or anything. I'm just curious as
let's go
to.
to, what is it, the overview, is that the one I called it? No, it's toward the end. Yeah, overall. I can speak in there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's fine.
right, and it came to this because so many of the applicants were so well qualified.
But maybe, to follow up on Mike's point, a bullet maybe should reflect the fact that that it was a consensus decision. It wasn't like a split vote or something like that, that if every,
You do talk about that earlier, but you might want to reiterate it here.
was it somewhere else earlier?
He talked about, yeah, they did talk about that there was a consensus and then a vote.
Let's make a fourth bullet, see if this works for you all. Arrived at a consensus, followed by a vote, unanimous.
And you can speak to it, just, talk about what that entailed, if you think it's meaningful. Help people understand.
Okay, when you can't figure out the bullet, huh?
No.
And voted.
There's a piece in here that I think, who would you like to work with, does address one of the outstanding features of the consensus selection.
Sure, and that's fine,
But
yeah.
the second thing, and the most important thing, is the plan does belong to the town.
Right.
And I believe, and I should have put my notes along, but I believe my impression or memory from our meeting was that we felt the leading candidate, closely followed by the second one, would work very well with the town, interacting with the people of the town.
That's a great
All the
point.
characters we have in here.
That's a great point.
No,
Right.
not in this room, keep looking here.
And I can drive that home too, because the we, I didn't.
Right,
look
the
at
we
it.
is a royal we.
Yeah.
An all-inclusive we. We'll get to it. All right, then the recommendation.
Now I have a question. How will the planning board proceed in terms of making their determination? Will they do it that night, or are they going to be prepared? Will they see the proposals? Will they review the interviews that have been recorded for them to see? Do we anticipate that? Do we know? Or will they?
I wouldn't, well, you've got 2 of the planning board members here now.
Right.
The other 3, the reason they appointed these 2 to the master plan steering committee was because they were the ones who were
Okay.
most interested.
Okay. I'm not asking them to, I'm just curious about.
But have the other planning board members been
Right.
presented with all the information?
Well, that's
so
my
far?
question, is are they going to be, will they have had an opportunity, whether they choose to take
Yes.
advantage of it is certainly up to them?
Yeah, I've
Okay.
shared the links to the interviews. And
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted
So
to
nobody's going to walk in and say, it's the first time?
Right, exactly. Gee, I got to wait for 2 more weeks and figure it out.
We're providing this as a read-ahead. This briefing will
Okay,
be
perfect.
the
Thank you.
planning board's read-ahead.
And we've scheduled a vote on the planning board's recommendation for Thursday night, should they be ready to vote.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. I won't be able to be there, I'll be at a school committee meeting, so I was just
Yeah, my
curious.
concern there is the subcommittee is there, and then the whole committee, I'd like it there, but it's not necessary to do business as a whole committee that way. We'll post it, so in case we do get the quorum, and we're prepared for that. But otherwise, as you see tonight, and then the folks that are there, opportunity, if the planning board has questions, and people can expound upon it. All right, now, fire them all.
When you send this out to the members between now and next Thursday, just ask if they have any questions to try to get them to us in advance, so we can have the answers right there. Forward all the questions through Paul, or through you, and then to Paul.
Yeah, we got a pretty good clue Mark's going to be able to answer them all.
Well, in case there's a
Well, the beauty of that, too, is timeliness.
flying,
Because what we had come up with before, if you recall, our process was that between Mara and myself, for sure, we'd answer administrative questions.
Right.
Questions of fact.
Right.
Questions of deliberation that required us all.
Right. And same thing, I would think that any questions about fact can get answered prior to the meeting, but in terms of the process of deliberation, you should just be prepared to answer them at the meeting. That would be, you'd start to tread across that open meeting line that none of us ever want to cross.
All right, now, we anticipate negotiations to take place once the contact is made with RKG. What I'd asked, and then ask of you all also, are there any points that you'd like to see covered in the negotiation process that are important enough that, if not a showstopper, certainly you'd like the planning board to have the ability to negotiate with the company on an issue or so? Like if you don't like the number of meetings, let's say, public meetings, if there's 10 and you think it should be 12, which obviously changes the scope a little bit. There would be trade space in the proposal as it exists, so, okay, if I give you 12 instead of 10, I'm not going to do this over here. And as I say, that'll be the trade space. That, though, I'd like you to send to Maren and myself, because it's going to deal with contract negotiations, and the recommendation we'll make to you, Rich, is that the planning board have an executive session immediately following this presentation and accepting of the presentation. So if you accept our recommendation as a planning board and you vote on it, poof, okay, now we're going with the company we recommend. We adjourn or go into executive session, 15 minutes worth at the most, to talk about those contract pieces, and then your strategy as a planning board, how you want to go about actually doing negotiations. And it doesn't need to be a deep strategy meeting at that point, but at the very least, let us know, as members of the committee, which way you want to head, like subcommittee take it, full committee take it, you and you take it, whatever, or if you want to keep it as the planning board. So maybe give that a little bit of thought before you actually meet on Thursday
Okay, that's a good recommendation.
Right, we won't have time for more than a 5 or 10-minute executive session because I've got that many other agenda items scheduled.
I have 3 items right now, and they're reasonably innocuous, worthwhile of addressing and seeing what kind of agreement we come to, but it's not like this is a showstopper. Okay? Excuse me.
So we'll have to inject that executive session within the meeting. That
Yeah.
means clear the room. Okay,
Is that okay with you?
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Okay.
Who do we have on afterwards?
I've got a full agenda afterwards, including 2 posted hearings, so,
And you've got us on there for 30 minutes, is that right?
no,
How much?
20.
Okay. Well, you saw how fast I went through this.
Use up 10, and then we'll have 10 more for the
Yeah.
executive session.
That's
Talk fast, say less.
Roger, sir.
Good, move on.
And now that you have complete thorough understanding.
Okay.
Okey-doke. I'd like to entertain a motion from the full committee to accept the briefing with changes as annotated tonight. Excuse me, sorry about this, folks. And then, no, it's for presentation to the planning board next Thursday.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say great work to the subcommittee that did the review of the applications or the proposals and the interview process, and I feel very comfortable going forward on that basis.
It's exciting,
Thank you.
that we'll start to, get into the meat of this,
Yeah.
instead of getting into these kind of, it's been a little nebulous up to this point, but now we'll actually get to sink our teeth into it, should be fun.
Good,
Paul did a
good.
great job.
Yeah, we all did.
A lot of home time.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, I'm closing the comment section. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's anonymous. It's anonymous.
That too.
All right, so we've done that. Been the debrief, if you're okay between Maren and myself in scheduling that with vendors after the award,
Just for you guys to do it, or for all of us to do it?
I'm going to invite the subcommittee for
Okay,
sure,
that's fine.
because the subcommittee is the one that actually had the discussions with them. To do a debrief, it's not necessary. We meet as a
I think it's
quorum,
courteous, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
but at the very least,
I have a question, how many did we have in the room when we presented the RFP? Were there was more than 4?
yeah.
6.
6, 8, 10, 8?
It's like 6 or 8, but some of them partnered.
Okay. And then my follow-up question is, were we surprised that there were only 4 submissions, or did we figure that was about what it was going to be? Typically, would a town expect to get 4, or is that a little bit surprising? It's just out of curiosity. Don't know, that's fine.
We got 2, 15 years ago.
Right.
We had to throw one out because it was way over
Okay.
budget, so.
So it's not typically, you would not typically like a,
I don't think there is a.
if you're doing a capital project in town, you could easily get 10 or 12, right, Rich? I mean,
Or you can
unusual
usually get
duck.
1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, there's not that many people that play in this arena.
Right.
That's fine,
And
just
the
curious.
ones we did get really represent the top planning minds that do planning in the whole region, not just Massachusetts.
Gotcha, thank you.
I think we were somewhat pleased that we did get 4 quality, that we could at least
You
jump
didn't have to
against.
throw one out.
Yeah.
You got to evaluate all of them
Yeah.
in depth, that is good. Yep.
Okey-doke. We're doing good. Now, we did not complete our review of the 2002 master plan, did we, Mr. Glavy?
No, but I think.
Can you ever truly complete something like that?
Right. But I appreciate that somebody, Myron, I'm assuming, saw to it to print out the relevant section of the master plan, 2002 and current master plan.
Is that what you'd like to do, is go to chapter 9?
Yeah, we should all have a copy of that, right?
There's a few more up here.
Yeah. Makes it a lot easier than flipping through the book. I'll be mercifully brief, at least in my intentions, and because I think some of it's just self-evident. We could, I'll make an opening comment here, since I assume you're turning this part over to me.
Yes, sir.
As was your intention, all right. The, the narrative part, the page and a half or page and 3/4 that precedes the list, does a wonderful job of telling you how important it is to have an implementation plan, and then we never really get around to having a plan, per se. we have a list of items, and some of them, in truth, we have adopted over the years. But my personal observation, and both in looking at the format of the implementation table, just based on experience and its structure, is it's not designed to either convey to any layman observer what this all means, and I don't think there's an inherent logic to it. The prioritization table, for instance, is either all ones or ongoing or two, and there's not much direction here. We have done some of these things, but if I had to sum it up in one sentence and say, I hope at the end of this process we don't just end up with a similar list. There's a lot of decent individual ideas here, but there's no cohesion to it, and I don't know.
So the two comments I had is, I like the idea of having some type of schedule. I think you're right. I think some of the things that are in here, that the cursory look I took at it, are so open-ended as to be meaningless. But the other thing that's missing is, and you've alluded to this, is did we or didn't we do it, and if we didn't, why?
Right.
There needs to be sort of a audit trail year by year that's developed by an implementation committee, whether it's a derivation of this group or however the planning board decides they want to do it. But there should be an annual exercise to go back through whatever schedule we come up with or whatever format we have and audit how did we do, how are we doing, what do we need to adjust, and it should be more of a narrative type thing, not necessarily data driven. There will be a data component to it, obviously, but it should be some narrative on it so that people who want to revisit it can look at it and see down the road, and they may just only care about economic development, or they may only care about housing or whatever it is that's their ballywick. They can go and see, okay, now I see why we didn't get there, that seems reasonable, or somebody's not paying attention, why aren't we paying attention? Well, let's hold somebody's feet to the fire and let's pay attention. So
I agree with all that, and then but I would say, even stepping back a step further, before, these are all action items that do not immediately suggest a specific goal in place. If you looked at the 5 land use recommendations, proposals, it's tough to look at that and say, well, what's the goal? And I think that's consistent throughout. So I think all of them, we ought to start by saying, our goal is to do this, and here's how we're going to get there. We're going to do it by doing these things in this order, and here's what we hope to achieve by it. None of that is conveyed here.
Would you like to come up with a template that we could work with?
I would rather that our consultants just be aware that this is our, a concern we have from our previous master plan, and that we want to, be very interested sooner rather than later what the final, how they intend to present it to us.
And we would obviously like to give feedback once we get a look at what they think. We would want to feedback onto that and see if we can make it, work for Littleton specific. But one of the things that came out of when we did talk to the other towns that really jumped out at me is that if you don't put a good implementation plan in place, and it's not just a table of stuff, it has to be an active process, then I might just walk out of the room right now and not bother. I need to know, for me personally, that there is a legitimate implementation and evaluation of implementation going forward. Otherwise, we're just risking a lot of work to sit on a shelf, which is, we've all seen it. That's all too often, that's the outcome.
I'm fond of saying a mediocre plan well executed will get results. An excellent plan on the shelf.
Right, exactly. So I think Paul's bringing out a great point, Glavy, and I think he's right. Let's leave it but let's all, I think we're reaching a consensus that this is important to us, and let's not let it not be important, and we'll push on when it's time. I don't think it's quite time yet, but let's just raise the flag and let's see what happens.
I think the exercise of going through each of the items is probably not, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do that at any point, but I don't know how valuable it would be to do that right now. It almost would make more sense to do that later in the process.
Exactly, that's what I think. I think the drawing up of the implementation plan and coming up with a strategy for execution is going to be dependent on what the actual master plan it looks like. We don't know what it looks like yet.
Yeah, once we start getting some feedback, and then we can go back and compare and say, well, what happened? Oh, well, you know what? This is we never did this, or this didn't work, or whatever.
We were still broke that year, we couldn't do it, whatever it is, you know.
Okay.
Those are good points, Paul. In fact, as I go through this, it looks like, many of these things never happen, and ones that did happen, happened by sheer happenstance.
Yeah, or, some of the things we adopted, they haven't really delivered yet either. We went through a lot of effort to get a couple of, major zoning things passed, and, I'm not saying this is a critique of anybody, but collectively,
Go ahead.
they haven't been,
Do it.
no, they just haven't been used. So, we need to be mindful of adopting things that are, it's one thing to have a senior, housing bylaw, but if it doesn't really get used, then what's the point, Let's have a plan that's gonna generate stuff, and it ought to...
Or let's know why we didn't.
Yeah.
Let's
right.
understand why we didn't, and that could be okay too. In a given circumstance, that might be okay too. As long as we understand why, then, we'll move forward.
So, my point, but I'm glad we focus on this.
Okay.
Do you consider implementation, your view of implementation is a reaction, or are you looking for something proactive? Because from your comments, I got the impression that some of the things that have gotten implemented in the recent past were done proactively.
Yes.
And not in reaction to anything. The town just decided to do it because it was the best interest of the town, because of what was anticipated to happen in the future.
I'd say that was true of the overlay zoning, and some other items.
Okay.
But at the end, they didn't yield what, they haven't yet yielded what we hoped to get out of it, so...
Been a tough economy for a number of years, and now there's some players that are up at the bat and see who's going to swing. And
Yeah, but there's still the overriding issue, should we be out trying to advocate that to property owners? I mean, that's more of an implementation thing. Should we be talking to property owners and saying, hey, you know what, none of you guys are doing this, why is that? Is there something in here we need to change, or whatever? But we just kind of adopted it and let it sit,
But the thing we gotta be careful of, to Mike's point, is
And the economy.
how proactive can we be? Because at the end of the day, we're not the planning
No,
board, we're not
no.
the zoning board, we're not the board of selectmen.
But we can put those concerns into the plan.
Exactly, and then we can annually revisit
Right.
and understand.
Your point on process is
Right.
exactly right. That's
Right.
that's the part that, more than anything, I think we
Right.
kind of let ourselves down in the past.
Because your
So-
points are valid or not, depending on what your point of view is, and, but the forum
Peter
for
and I don't
determining that
disagree.
is not necessarily here.
not.
Well, I'm just
not?
saying, exactly. Right, your point or not, you see, but my point is that this might not be the forum for that.
Right.
Because the execution of the ideas are not the master plan update and steering committees.
What I want to offer before we go too far down the rabbit hole is, a lot of things did happen, and did happen
Yes. Oh,
proactively.
yeah.
I mean, just one real cursory one right off the top here was like adopt the Community Preservation Act. An easy one.
Right.
We went down that road. 2002, you decided we'd like to do that. The town eventually did do that. The overlay.
But even now, on that point, we adopted the CPA, the town did. It's only within the past year that we've talked about having a structured plan for the Community Preservation Committee to operate on. They've been, to date, operating on applications as they come in without kind of a goal in place. So, I applaud the folks that are currently undertaking that exercise, but even there, everything on here, even if it was implemented, can be fine-tuned toward the accountability.
Yeah, that's
Did
not
it
the
deliver
debate.
the way it was supposed to?
There is a maturation process ongoing. I didn't want folks to be left, because not everybody's going to read this plan. And as we talk about some of the things here, and folks take an impression away that, so we did this 2002 plan, and nobody even did anything with it.
Oh, no, that's not the case.
That's- yeah.
We can do it better, that's all.
That's it. And then, we have to understand too, it's going to be up to individual boards and committees.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I would think as the selectmen can offer, some guidance, from a town perspective, is what we're trying to achieve, and speak to the boards at large, if you will. And as we go through this process and how we endorse it, and then pretty much the presentation when we finally get to town meeting, and that there's many boards are represented at each of the town meetings. One technique might be is the chairman of each board stands up and says, our board is committed to it, and here's how we're telling you we're committed. I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but there's many ways to do that, and that way now people put their own personal
Yeah, maybe
reputation
even
on the
we could
line.
recommend, I mean, this is jumping way ahead, but as a, for instance, on a process thing, after the town election and town meetings happen, we have a general session where all the boards who might have a role in this, we review the master plan and ask each board, how they intend to act on it over the next year.
That's a great idea.
And then just kind of work it into the year's activity.
Because one board may say, I'm happy to do this, but now we got to do something about the budget first, to resource it. Okay, good. Anything else you want to cover on this?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, that's what we had on our agenda this evening, folks. So I'll go around the room. Lauren?
Actually, I thought the last two conversations wrapped well together. I thought RKG did a good job of saying that they would include the implementation plan, ideas of the implementation plan early in the process. And
Good point for, yeah.
So anyway, that was all I had.
Yes, as they were speaking, it wasn't, okay, we're at the end now, and here's our implementation plan. It was pretty much developing it throughout the process. Yeah. Melissa?
Just three quick things. One, just again, thank you to the subcommittee. There's a lot of work and time there, so thank you guys very much. The other two are related to our Facebook site. First is if anyone has a new picture that we want to use, I'd love to change it up a little bit. I was kind of thinking maybe the fire station with the lights on it or something. I don't know, but if anyone has something, send it on over. Second one, are we okay to post that we've made a recommendation? Our recommendation's going to the planning board? Do you want to hold off on
Yeah,
that?
this was public what we did this evening, but as far as the Facebook page, I would like us the opportunity to talk to the
Go to the
planning
planning
board,
board. Yep,
refine as necessary, and then I'll link the whole briefing to it,
yep, absolutely.
in
Sounds
addition
good.
to the town website. But it's all public information, so.
If we did post something to the website, then there might be more participation at the planning board meeting.
That's a good point.
We're going to get you tap
Isn't it
shoes.
cute when he gets up?
We could use the ratings, let me tell you.
We've been slipping?
Come on, Peter, you're supposed to be on top of that.
Need more candy, more hands in the audience.
You've not slipped in the Nielsen's in the last 10 years.
No, call ABC.
Yes, the ratings have been slipping.
Rich?
I'm good.
John? I'm good. Mike? Good. Renato?
I'm good.
I'm with him.
Peter? Bill? Mike?
Thank you.
All right,
How about you?
I think I'm very happy.
Woohoo. Motion to close the meeting?
Second.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much, folks. Appreciate you sticking with us. And before we do shut off television, as chairman of the planning board, Rich Crowley just pointed out, he'd like to have a very large audience next week, 14 January, 7 PM. Are you upstairs or down here?
Down here.
Right here in room 103. Come on, join the party. Be down here with us, please. Thank you. Okay. John, if you get the TV, please.
said it would do under extreme ice load. The entire top section of a massive oak in our backyard had snapped off and missed the house by about 2 yards. One end of the massive section of tree rested on the railing of our deck, but left the deck unscathed and only caused minor damage to our beloved hydrangea tree. Large branches littered our property and small trees were knocked down in our woods. The crown of one tree next to the house snapped, its branches dangling ominously over the ground, still clinging to the trunk. Our ice-coated steep driveway was impassable, as flexible white oaks bent to the ground in a U-shape under the ice load. Inconvenient, but quite pretty. Once we turned on the news, we realized that something big had indeed happened. Massive power outages, dangerous downed lines, damage to homes and cars. We did lose our power at 11 o'clock a.m. and it stayed out for about 3 hours. Inconvenient, but we called ourselves lucky and cheered Littleton Light and Water. During our brief power outage, the temperature rose and the ice began to thaw and drop off the trees whose branches hung over our house because of the weight of the ice. The sound of dropped ice skittering across our roof was frightening, and we scurried down to the bottom floor of the house just in case, holding our breath. As days passed, we started to hear from friends in town who had endured far worse than we. Families displaced, homes reaching 40 degrees in temperature, roofs damaged, trees coming through children's bedrooms during the night, a devastating fire. We count ourselves fortunate that we emerged relatively unscathed. As soon as the ice thawed, we brought a tree removal person in post-haste to take down those trees we had worried about over the summer, but had put off because of the economy. No sense in tempting fate twice.
The first recollection that I have is actually one of my own, and it involves the day after the ice storm and going up to Littleton Common. I was heartened to see that there was electricity in the common,
so dark outside. But with the flashlight, I could see these huge branches within a quarter-inch of the glass just hovering there. My son ran outside in the icy rain and, in disbelief, saw that a huge oak tree from our neighbor's yard had crashed right through my roof, just missing my chimney by an inch. It covered most of the roof, and that was the tree that was on the deck. A friend happened to be going by, Paul McGovern, and stopped and told my son he would be back to help him when it got light. My son then went up to the attic, and icy rain was coming through the holes where the branches had come right through the roof, and he had to put buckets and pails to catch it, as it was coming through my bathroom and kitchen ceilings. After daylight came, he took pictures of this tree on the roof, and Paul cut a lot of the big branches off the house so we could have Lanny Poor, another great friend, and his big logging truck take the major part of the tree off the house. It was a horrible experience to go through, and so much damage, and so many openings in the roof. Later in the morning, my grandson Adam and friends of ours stopped by to help clear some of the wood up, and then they helped Chuck put huge tarps on the roof to cover it. I am so lucky, as I know it could have been much worse, and we are grateful and thankful for our family and friends who helped us at this disastrous time. One day, all the snow and ice from this terrible winter of snow and ice storms will be gone, and my roof will be repaired, but the memories of that horrible sound will not be forgotten. So that's my story and the nightmare on Goldsmith Street. Besides the huge potholes on the street, I now have some on my roof.
The next submission is from Barbara and Alan McRae. Barbara writes, my daughter and grandchildren had just moved in a few weeks before the storm. Everyone was sound asleep when I heard a loud crash. Stephanie, our daughter, had heard it also, and both of us got up to see what had happened. We crept around the house
Gonzalez had crews from, I know we had Wakefield and 2 or 3 other towns, and maybe Reading and another one, that were working on the project for the next 3 or 4 days, and we ended up a lot better than
Anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, well, the electric department did a fabulous job. I know my power was only up for 4 or 5 hours. We were very lucky. I know other people in town were out longer, but nothing compared to towns like Fitchburg and Lunenburg and communities out there. We did much better. Even Westford and Chelmsford suffered more than we did.
Sure.
So we were great, and our schools were open, mostly, and the kids
said, no, we're just running an extension cord over from Subway. So I thought that was marvelous, not